What's up, everybody? Thank you guys so much for joining us live. Today is Friday, July 17th, and we're doing our normal live weekly training, but we're kicking it up a notch or two today with a very, very special guest, Beth Lambert. If you guys have been in our program for more than a day, you know Beth and who she is and what she's all about, but she's coming off of an amazing month and how she wrote 200 items in June. So we're going to go through her day and like her daily plan and what her activity looks like and her quote volume and close rates, the whole 9 yards. We're going to hold nothing back. I'm even going to show you all the sources of her new business for the month of June and even more. And we're going to try to make time for your questions. I think that the presentation should only last about 30 to 40 minutes or so, maybe less. It just kind of depends. So go ahead and chat me if you have questions once we get to that part. If you're still chatting now, there's already hundreds of chats. There's what? 528 people, 29, 30, 33. There's over 500 people on this call, and there's hundreds of chats already. I will try to get to all of your questions, but kind of hold your questions towards the end when I ask for questions and just chat them in so I can try to moderate them. But first, I want to just, again, welcome Beth Lambert here to the webinar, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint here. This will take me just a second. It's going to allow me to stay really focused here and share the PowerPoint. Oh, hold on a second. I got a glitch. I got to share it. While I'm pulling this up, Beth, why don't you just do a brief introduction of yourself? Just a brief, kind of your history, little 2-minute intro.
So I've been with the Wiggins agency since 2013. And prior to coming to work for the Wiggins agency, I really had little to no experience in insurance. I worked for another large insurance company for about 6 months, and I really hated it, to be honest with you. I wasn't motivated. I didn't have any drive. I didn't have enough knowledge and training to really, dive deep into it. So I wasn't very successful there. And prior to coming to work for the Wiggins agency, I had a long-standing background in manufacturing. I worked for a pharmaceutical company for almost 11 years. I was an operator, ran the lines, and did attributes and things like that. So I had little to no experience. But when I came on and sat me up to be a hybrid model, and what he wanted me to do was do both sales and service, because he really didn't have, like designated room for one or the other. So he, put me through training. He went through a talk pass with me. He set the expectations for call volume and, taught me how to overcome objections. He walked me through phone calls when I would get people on the fence. He would have them in the office and I would watch him close them. And I really learned a lot from him during the very beginning. Obviously I started in September of 2013. And by October, I had 60 items. And he said, "You're not a service person. You're definitely built for sales."
Amen.
So that's what I gravitated more towards. And, from there on out, I just started setting my own goals and my own, my own expectations for myself. So for the first 2 years, I wrote anywhere between 55 and 75 items a month. And by April of 2015, I had written 100 items. And from there, I've stayed very, very consistent with that. I've added sources of business that I've been able to work. I've increased a lot of my activity, and I've stayed very, very faithful to my follow-up. So that's really what's helped me to stay very consistent with my level of production. But coming into insurance, I had little to no experience and no drive. And now I can't wait to get to the office to do what I do. And I love it.
Well, how about we dive in further now that I fixed the PowerPoint glitch issue and see what your actual day looks like. So a couple things. First, hopefully everybody can see my PowerPoint that I'm sharing here. A couple things. I want to go down to, here we go. Here's my mouse. So I wanted to highlight something real quick. Beth has come to, I believe, all of our events, right? All of our CWC events. And this is us at the last event in Orlando. And I just want you to see the kind of crap she has to put up with. Look at this. Look at this silliness. This silly guy, he thinks he's hilarious. But no, sincerely, I do appreciate Beth coming to our events and being such a big part of the live events. Hopefully you've gotten to come. I did want to mention that the Vegas event, y'all, we have like less than 40 seats left. So I'm just throwing that out there. If you or your agency were wanting to participate, Vegas is almost sold out. We're really, really looking forward to it. And it's literally the only insurance event for the rest of the year. All the other events are not taking place that typically take place in the fall, except ours. So I just wanted to plug for a moment the live event. Now, let's talk about your day. All right. So what does your day look like? And I mean, start from when you get to the office, at what time, and just kind of walk us through the day in the life of Beth.
So I usually get here about 45 minutes prior to our office opening, and I, sort of sift through emails and make sure I can delegate service-related things to a qualified service team member so that I can kind of clear my plate for the day. Anything that they can't handle, I try to, get through that rather quickly. From there, I open up my lead system. That's what I live and breathe every single day. And can I mention the company that we use a follow-up tool and Lightspeed for our leads management system and our phone service, and they are amazing. So with that being said, that's the first and primary thing that I work out of from the time that I come in until the time that I leave. So expectations for me is really going to revolve around one, call volume, and two, quoting and the amount of prospects that I talk to throughout the day. So that's what I focus on. I pull up my dashboard. I immediately start reaching out to people that I have quoted in the days and weeks prior to, because those are the ones that I want to close out for the day. And then once I've done that, I start working other campaigns, and that could consist of requotes, cross sells, win backs, referrals, help from the service team, because I also get a big bit of that. So that's pretty much what I do. So once I've cleared my plate for the day and I've reached out to all of the people that I've quoted and working with that I'm trying to get off of my plate, then I start with my call volume. And that's something that I try to stay very dedicated to with little to no distractions. And I stay very consistent, and I, make myself accountable for that throughout the day.
And, I get this question all the time. How is it possible to make 100 plus calls a day? Like I literally had somebody tell me yesterday he would pay us thousands of dollars to send his producer here just to watch you work. Mm-hmm. I was like, no, that's weird. But he says that they don't think that they can make 100 calls a day. What does that look like in terms of your level of outbound calls? But you also take a fair amount of inbound calls too, including service calls. So why don't you kind of talk about that mix and how you just stay active and rolling consistently day in and day out?
So for me, when I say little to no distractions, it is dial after dial after dial, leave voicemail, dial, leave voicemail, dial, leave voicemail. So for me, it's getting myself in such a rhythm that I don't let up. So I don't make 5 or 10 phone calls and then walk away from the desk and come back and make 5 or 10 more. I stay with, consistently dialing out and leaving a 15-second voicemail, hang up, dial. One of the main things that you want to do is not to get distracted by looking at too many notes or, a lot of research. They call that analysis paralysis. You do not want to spend too much time on the lead without getting somebody on the phone first. So don't look too much into the past of why they left or, why you weren't able to win them over 6 months ago or what have you. Is just make sure that you're dialing out and leaving a voicemail. Once you get them on the phone, then you can start digging a little bit deeper. But for me, the minimum is 80 calls a day. I do upwards of 100, 150, sometimes 200. There's been days where I've did 300 phone calls. Now, keep in mind, when I do that, that's a lot of voicemails. There's little to no real conversations there. But the whole point of that is to generate the drive of the callback so that I can get that opportunity. There's been days where I've had 50 plus callbacks, and then I've gotten 5 or 6 households from that. So that's one thing I try to stay steady and faith, steady and comforting, is that if I'm doing the calls and the activities there, the follow-up and the quotes are going to come in. The activity has never failed me.
Ever. And, when it comes to your balance of also taking inbound service calls too, y'all, she does it all. Like, seriously, I know we preach specialization. There's over 700 people on this call now. How does that feel? Does it feel pretty cool? So we preach specialization, right? We preach, if you're a salesperson, let them do sales. If they're a service person, let them do service. Of course, there'll be a little bit of overlap, but she'll take 15 or 20 service calls a day and handle most of them. But maybe you get a call where it's like a can of worms. They're upset about a rate increase or a claim situation or whatever. You certainly pass those off. But how in the world do you balance everything? So all those outbound calls, plus people calling you back, plus inbound calls, plus emails that are coming in from follow-up tool, your lead management system, or other things. How do you balance all that? Do you just do one thing at a time, or are you just always running around like a chicken with your head cut off?
That's probably more of an accurate description, but I just try to handle things as quickly as possible. I actually do like taking the incoming service calls, not to take away from others, but just because it allows me an opportunity to look for something they may not have and also do that generation for myself, or just to simply build rapport with some of our current clients. And that helps with future, things later on down the road, as far as them remembering your name and saying, hey, I talked with Beth. She helped me with something. I'd like to have her help me with this or what have you. So taking service, to me, it's just like picking up the phone. It's not really an interruption to my day. It doesn't really get me off task. It doesn't really get me off pace. It's really, for me, it's a positive thing because I get so much from that just as I would the outbound. So for me, it's a great balance.
And I'm actually going to show y'all in a few minutes her actual sales results from June and the sources, breaking down the sources. And you'll see she's very diversified. I do want to dive back to my PowerPoint really quickly here. So let me share my screen and get back to PowerPoint. So when it comes to leads and lists, Beth already kind of hit that. She's working a combination of many things. So cross sells, requotes, win backs. What other leads are we getting and doing? And it's okay to talk about like the direct mail leads we're doing, or we were doing some live transfers. We don't do a ton of leads. And right now we're not doing much, if anything, at this moment. But talk about the mix and why it's important to be diversified with the different types of leads that they're working.
Mainly because you cannot depend on one source as your sole level of production. I mean, even when I was writing 55 to 75 items a month for the first 2 years, that was off cold purchase leads. I did not have any help from the service team. I had no mortgage or realtor referral partners. There wasn't a ton of other sources coming in. So once I started compiling all of those together, that's really where I've seen a step in production. Now, not only that, also adding more value to my talk paths as far as talking about higher liability limits, protecting their assets, talking about umbrella protection and life insurance for their family. So those are all of those things combined. That's really where you start to see the major difference in your production. But for me, lead sources like the direct mail, that's been a super good thing for me. We did have live lead sources back in the fall of last year, connected leads. There was a few others that we were working with. Some of those are hit or miss, but they are also a good source of business. So, don't ever count those out as not being a good one. But it definitely helps to have a very diverse contribution to what you're doing.
Yeah, some things will be hit a lot, but also miss a lot. And what I would say is if your agency owner is investing in leads for you guys, whether they're web leads, live transfers, age leads, if it's just a leads database that they built over years, work them like crazy. What pays? Persistence. Right? Persistence pays. And you're going to see Beth's close rate in a few minutes when I pull up her quote report, and it'll show her close rate. Her close rate's not even 30% some weeks. Some weeks it's barely 20, but we stay on people over and over and over again. So building your own pipeline, but being diverse. I wish I had $1 for every time an LSP or a licensed sales agent from the agency would send me an email and complain about the list that they're working. Right. And like, I can do something about it. Like you're telling me that all the numbers are bad, this and that. And it turns out that they're calling a direct mail list. Calling on a direct mail list, which will have mainly wrong numbers or bad numbers, or like a home number that's not really a home number, that you're just kind of wasting your time. So shake it up a bit. Take some service calls like Beth and generate some sales. Ask for a referral. Start to develop relationships with mortgage partners. Ask your agency owner manager, can you work a requote list or a win back list? We love requotes and win backs. Why? What's your close rate?
100%.
100%. So I just said some weeks it's not even 20% or 30%. What do we mean when we say that your close rate's 100%?
I mean, it's buy or die. So we never quit following up with the prospect until we've closed the business. I mean, obviously, if they say never call me again, but there's the close ratio is 100% because we are continuously following up with them 3, 6, 9, 12 months out to make sure that we're getting the business.
Persistence pays, y'all. And just remember that you're building a pipeline for future sales. So, if you feel like the leads are weak, you need to try to think what you can do to change that situation. Again, you'll see in a moment how diversified her actual sources of new business are. Let's talk about top paths for a minute. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint again. And, when it comes to our top paths that we use for the various different types of leads, and someone asked about voicemails, don't you worry, we're going to get to voicemails and emails in a second. But let's talk about the top paths for a moment, that we use to work with various types of leads. And I did want to highlight a brand new course that we added recently is the lead generation courses. There's a lead generation course in the owner section, which teaches owners and managers things to consider in terms of selecting lead sources and vendors, when it comes to all the different types of leads, internet leads, live transfers, direct mail, cross sells, requotes, win backs, referrals, service team, every type of lead, things to consider and how to coach the team. And then we have a lead generation course in the sales section, which teaches how to work basically every type of lead. But this is more of a general thing. How do you get so many people to agree to quotes? Are you asking permission? Are you being assumptive and assertive? What does that sound like? What's your talk path like when you're trying to connect with somebody?
I was telling one of our service team members the other day, I was like, never ask, just go into it and start verifying the information. Never ask them if it's okay. Just say, hey, I want to look at this with you. Is this the same address that you were at 6 months ago when we talked? Or are these the same vehicles? Okay. When I start calling somebody, obviously I introduce myself. I don't ask them if it's a good time. I say, hey, I'm sitting here looking at your quotes or your old policies. A lot has changed since we last talked. I'm getting these updated for you now. Are you at 123 Main Street? Do you still drive the 2015 Silverado? So I just assumptively go into it that way. It's very rare that I get, cut off or even stopped and saying, hey, I'm not interested. They already know you're invested in them because you're already looking at their information. You're already looking at their stuff. So you're already invested at that point. But yeah, I just assumptively go into it and I don't ask.
Assume the quote, assume everything. Don't ask permission. It might seem nice to say, hi, is this a good time? What are you doing? Why? Like they literally answered the phone. Of course it's a good time. Or can I interest you in a quote? Would you like a quote right now on your insurance, Beth?
No.
Like who in their right mind would like a quote on insurance? Like I'd rather do literally anything. I'd rather go to the dentist than get quotes on insurance, right? So don't ask. Everything is assumptive. Be assumptive and assertive. Follow what she does. Now, what if somebody gives you pushback? What if they give you an objection? Do you immediately stop and just say, next, or do you try to overcome that objection? What does it sound like?
No, I try for a second time. Obviously, at that point, you don't want to completely turn them off. So if they give you a second objection and you tried twice, then, now's not a good time. I'll follow up with you in 6 months. Tell them that you appreciate their time and you still want to try to win their business maybe later on down the road. So leave the door open. Never close it completely, even if they give you that second objection. But, that works a lot for me, too. I get a future follow-up commitment and they're okay with that. So.
Well, you're about to celebrate your 7th anniversary. Are you still closing deals that you quoted in your first, second, third year?
There's been quite a few people that I've talked to, even back as early as 2014 and 2015 that I've closed. So
persistence pays, y'all. You're building that pipeline. I can't stress it enough. Now, that doesn't mean that, I'm new. I don't have a pipeline. So it's okay that I'm only writing 14 items a month. No, come on now. Like you can do more. You right now can do more. And I wanted to mention something earlier. Don't you dare compare yourself to Beth or to anybody else. What I want you to do is actually a secret to her success is to focus on beating yourself, right? Beat yourself. Look in the mirror every morning and say, hey, I'm going to do better than I did yesterday today. And at the end of the day, look in the mirror and say, hey, I did better today. I'm kind of tired. I'm ready to watch some Netflix and eat some popcorn and just chill with a glass of wine. Anybody? Or is that just me? That's my nightly routine. Now y'all know my nightly routine, popcorn and wine. Beat yourself. Don't you dare compare yourself to Beth. She's been here for 7 years. We're a much larger agency, so we get more inbound calls from current customers and service requests and things. We have a service team, a dedicated service team that works to generate leads to pass to her. We do invest in some marketing, not a lot, I'm not gonna lie. We do invest in some marketing. She has me, and I think I'm pretty valuable. She has me literally 2 doors down from her. Don't you dare compare yourself to her. What I want you to do is start to realize that you can do more. Every single one of you watching this call can do more. Can you make a few more phone calls today than you did yesterday? Can you quote a few more households this week than you did last week? Can you close 2 or 3 more households this month than you did last month? Well, if you keep just getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, before you know it, you are number 1 in the agency, maybe number 1 in the market, maybe number 1 in the territory, maybe number 1 in the country. I don't know. But just compare yourself to yourself, right? And beat yourself. Beth has an amazing opportunity and she's taking full advantage of it. That's the thing. All of you have an amazing opportunity. It's to what extent will you take advantage? So good stuff on the talk pass. Let's talk about voicemails. Let me just pull up my PowerPoint real quick. So everybody asks this all the time. Should I leave a voicemail? What should the voicemail sound like? What about emails or handwritten cards or other things like that? So Beth, you make tons and tons of calls. I'm going to, by the way, we're getting very close to showing her actual call reports, quote reports in production. I'm going to show that here in just a minute. What do your voicemails sound like? Do you send emails? How does all that stuff work to try to connect to people?
So one, always leave a voicemail, because how are you ever going to get a call back? If somebody calls you and they don't leave a voicemail, you're never returning that call. Two, when you leave a voicemail, don't give a reason as to why you are calling. Make sure it's very obviously where you're calling from and your name, the agency, and so on and so forth, but not a reason as to why you're calling. You do not want to give them the choice as to how urgent it is that they return your call. Once you get them on the line, then you can start diving into, hey, this is why I was reaching out to you, so on and so forth. But always leave a voicemail. And, for me, it's very simple. I just say, hey, this is Beth Lambrecht. I'm calling you from the Craig Wiggins Allstate Agency. Give me a call back when you get a minute. Here is my direct number. And then that's pretty much it as far as the voicemail goes.
So you're not trying to sell. You're not saying, hey, we've got some great new rates. You need to give us a call. Oh my God, you're going to love these rates, right? Or we miss you. Oh, we miss you so much. I know we sucked so hard last time that you left us, but God, we miss you. We miss you. Will you come back? No, don't try to sell via voicemail. Don't try to sell via email. What do your emails look like? So if you send a manual email, are you like typing these paragraph long emails, or is it just short and quick?
No, email. Now I do actually send emails from our Allstate approved email address, but we also in our leads management system, we have campaigns set up that generates those. Well, they trickle them out over a period of time. So we have campaigns set up that trickles those out over so many days. But it's not selling a product or even trying to say I can beat your rates or so on and so forth. It's just saying, hey, I would love to connect with you today. When's a good time for me to give you a call back, or when's a good time for us to connect? And so that's basically the gist of the initial email of trying to make contact with the prospect.
Short and sweet and trying to drive the conversation. Y'all, people do not like to be sold. People hate being sold, but you know what? They love to buy. In fact, almost 8 out of 10 Americans love spending their money so much they run out of it. 8 out of 10 Americans spend so much money every 2 weeks that they run out before the next paycheck. I'm actually okay with that. I would prefer that they save more, make better buying decisions on other things. When it comes to protecting their income, protecting their assets, protecting their family, protecting their future, we can do all of that, and the price is the price. But don't try to sell via email or voicemail. I'm just telling y'all, if you're not getting a lot of return calls, it's because you sound desperate or you're trying to sound too salesy. Just be very matter of fact. Give them your direct number. We're a big fan of direct numbers. If your agency is just using one main phone number, it can be really hard to get people back to the individual person. So Beth gives out her direct number like candy. If someone calls her and they miss her, it goes to her voicemail. It's really nice for her to then be able to call them back. And again, I'm going to show you the call reports here in just a minute. But let's say you've made all these calls, you've sent all these emails, and you finally get somebody on the phone. You mentioned it earlier, kind of about our sales process, but I just want to go over this one more time. Just how important actually following the CWC sales process is. And for those of you that are newer, hopefully you've watched the CWC sales process scorecard, but it's all about selling coverage and value, not price. We lead primarily with the big dollars, the liability coverages, and we don't really make a big deal on price. The price is the price, man. When somebody has an accident, they don't care what the price is. They care about the coverages. If something happens at their home, they don't care what very small amount of their monthly mortgage payment that's going towards their insurance is. They care that we're going to rebuild that home, right? If something happens to their spouse or loved one, they don't care how much the premium was in that life insurance policy. What they care about is that we are there for them to help pay for college education and put food on the table for their family. So when somebody needs their insurance, the price doesn't matter. Why on God's green earth do we make such a big deal out of it during the quoting process? So that's our sales process in a nutshell. And hopefully most of you know all of that. But do you truly follow that every time? So now I'm putting her on the spot. Do you truly lead with liability, quote umbrellas and stuff on just about every single prospect that you work with, and why?
So we have an agency standard, okay, but I also have a standard for myself because I am truly convicted of why I'm writing higher limits and why I'm talking to this family about, protecting their assets, protecting them from the worst case scenario, and making sure that when they come to me, they're not going to say, again, what am I paying? They're going to say, am I covered? So I am truly convicted that that is the right thing to do. I believe in that. I'm passionate about that. So for me, even if the agency standard is 100, 300, I'm not writing below 250, 500 because that is my standard. And if I'm going to write good business, it's going to retain for my agency owner, I'm going to do it the right way. So for me, there's no wavering on that.
Now, this doesn't work every time, right? This doesn't work every time. By following the CWC sales process, you're going to close one more household out of every 10 or 15, right? But do that math. If you quote, one household a day, and that's 20 households in the course of a month, if you could close one or two or more of those a month, what would that do to have those extra 4 to 10 items? Do that over the course of the year. Do that over the course of the career. By the way, the better the quality of the customers that you write, the better the quality of the referrals that they're going to give, the more that they're going to stick, the more likely they will be to say yes to that life insurance or retirement conversation on down the road when you bring it back up if they didn't do it at new business. So by writing good, clean, quality business at a high level, it sticks. You're going to close a few more deals a week or so, and y'all, that's going to catapult your individual growth and your agency. But just understand this doesn't work all the time. And you'll see that when we look at our actual close rates in just a moment. Let's talk about activity though. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint for just a couple minutes and hit share screen. It's actually really hard to switch this back and forth. So I'm going to go through for just a few minutes on Beth's activity levels. So I'm pulling up a screenshot here. Now I'm looking at just June. All right, so I'm pulling up a June report here, and you can see this June 1st, June 30th, just for Beth. These are incoming calls. Incoming calls are at top, and outgoing calls are down below. So incoming calls, she took 1,246 total incoming calls, y'all. That's like 50 or 60 a day. Think about that, 50 or 60 a day total coming in. She answered 1,000 of them. So these were ones that rung and maybe went to voicemail, or she just didn't grab, someone else grabbed. So look at that high answer rate. That's about 40 to 50 calls a day for almost 34 and a half hours of total talk time. Outgoing calls, this is just for 1 month. I bet some of y'all, these would be your numbers year to date. And I'm just calling you out. I'm just saying, I bet some of y'all would have numbers like this year to date, YTD, 1/1 to 6/30. 1 month, 2,390 total outgoing calls, 1,800 answered, 500 no answers, 20 hours of talk time. That's only about an hour or so of outbound calls a day, but almost 2 hours a day of inbound calls, lots of emails, because in this day and age, lots of business is done via email, right? But add all that up. Let's look at the totals. This is the total. 3,600 total calls in June, 2,900 of which completed, almost 55 hours of total talk time, and then hundreds and hundreds of emails and other communications. Y'all, you make these number of calls, you'd have to not be very good at your job to not write a significant amount of business, right? And I wanted to show our lead management system. This is actually, I don't know if you've ever even seen this report. This is a report that we can run and show how many active plans someone's working, inbound and outbound calls, inbound and outbound emails. Look at all these plans, because she has all these plans applied and leveraging her lead management system, leveraging the automation of the lead management system, send lots of emails. By the way, 0 text. People ask all the time, do you guys text? No, we don't text. You can't text through this system at our carrier. We have to use a different system. We do use that different system, but it's mainly, honestly, for customer service. But anyways, 0 text, but hundreds and hundreds of emails inbound. So these are people returning her emails, hundreds of inbound calls. These are people calling her back. So see, y'all, this works. All those voicemails, all those emails, all those handwritten cards, they relate to this. So I always say it's like planting seeds. Every voicemail, every email, every contact attempt, every handwritten card, everything that you do is planting seeds. And some are going to grow very small, but some are going to grow big. Look at all that sweet, sweet corn. Oh, my Lord. I'm going to grill it. I'm going to pop it on the grill, wrap it in some foil with some butter, and I'm going to grill that corn. But y'all, you can't expect it to happen overnight, right? All of these seeds, many won't grow. Some will grow too small. But if you do it as consistently as Beth, this will be your crop. There's not a week that goes by that she doesn't freaking crush it. Why? Because she crushed it hard on her activity last week and last month and last year. Okay. It's all about planting seeds. Now, some of you may say, Beth is just unique, right? And she is. She's very unique. You know, I can never do that. You know what? You're 100% right. 100% right. If you think that you can't do this, you're correct. If you think that you can't pick up the phone 8 to 10 times an hour, or in Beth's case, 15 to 20 times an hour, if you think that you can't quote 8 to 12 policies a day and write 1 or 2 households a day, you're 100% right. What you believe in your mind is truly powerful. And I always kind of talk about this guy right here. I don't know his name, but this guy, like 60 something years ago, ran the first 4-minute mile. So man, I'm going to stop sharing. Men and women, the ladies, have been walking this earth for hundreds of thousands of years, walking this earth. And not a single soul ever ran a 1-minute mile. I don't know. Maybe I go back 2 or 300 years, 2 or 3,000 years ago. And maybe a tiger was chasing some dude. Maybe that dude ran a 4-minute mile. But in recorded history, no man had ever run a 4-minute mile until that dude did. Within a month, dozens of people all around the world broke a 4-minute mile. So if you think that you can't run the 4-minute mile, you're right. By the way, I'm in that camp. There's no way on God's green earth I'm running a 4-minute mile. I can run a 12 to 15-minute mile. Okay, I'm not running a 4-minute mile. I mean, I can walk that. I can walk it in 20. But I know I'm not going to do that, honestly, because I'm not going to put forth the effort that it takes. The only thing that separates her from anybody else is her effort. Her effort and attitude, honestly, as well. Staying positive and hitting it hard. So why don't you talk for just a minute before I pull up the actual quote numbers and other things. Talk for a minute about the importance of keeping your mind straight, staying positive. An owner sent me an email the other day. How do I keep my staff from getting burned out? I was like, I don't know. I don't have staff that get burned out. They just crush. So why don't you talk about the mental fortitude that's necessary to really do this at a high level?
So it's really important. I'll be honest with you. Yesterday, I caught JP in one of the back offices, and I was really frustrated with everything that had been going on this week. We've had some technical difficulties, and
none of y'all have had that, right? None of y'all have had any tech issues. I'm just kidding. Please don't chat. Please don't blow up the chats. Keep going.
So we've had a lot of technical difficulties. We've had frustrations with our quoting platform. We had problems with some other things, and I just was not seeing the fruits of my labor like I normally do. Which again, it never fails. Okay. So I take comfort in that. But for, yesterday and the last few days, I was really like starting to get frustrated. And, he said, no, don't worry, you'll be fine. Don't worry, you'll be fine. And so for me, I try not to get too deep into a hole where it prevents me from moving forward or prevents me from putting forth the same effort, because if I do, days and weeks after this, I'm going to see the results of that, which meaning little to no effort. So if I just keep steady with that, and I, keep my mind out of a rut, and I don't focus too much on those little issues that I can't control and worry about what I can control, then I'm not going to get too discouraged. But I don't really get burned out. In fact, I come in here and I get myself in such a rhythm and a routine that I just keep going forward, keep plugging, keep moving quickly. And, I close my door and I stay to myself, so I just, for me, if I allow myself to dig a hole, I mean, that's going to totally change my mindset. So you kind of have to control that and take a step back and say, look, I can only control so much of this, but I can also keep contributing, and I can also keep working hard, and I can also keep doing the same things that have always worked for me, and not let the little distractions get in the way of that.
Seriously, you got to have mental toughness. Be tough, y'all. How do you feel about no or rejection?
Initially, I would go to JP and I would get so mad, because whatever prospect it was wasn't listening, or they weren't taking my advice, or they weren't really trusting me with, with what I was trying to help them with. And he said, you know what? Not all people are going to buy into what you're trying to teach them. It's not that they don't trust you. They just are not buying into what. And so he said, do not get so emotionally hung up that you can't move on to the next person that's going to either eventually appreciate you, and value you and trust you and love you for who you are and what you're trying to do for them to help their family. So he kind of taught me to have the whole next mentality and not to get so emotionally hung up on the deals that just don't come through for me. And so that's one of the things that I've had to learn, because initially I would get so tore up that it would stop me from plugging forward for the rest of the day. And it kind of crippled me in a sense. And I wasn't able to do more like I wanted to. So I just try not to get so emotionally hung up that it stops me from doing what I'm trying to do, is help other people.
Some will, some won't. So what? Next. Right now, let's see how much of a failure Beth is. Y'all want to see how bad how much Beth is awful? Y'all want to see that? Let's take a look at her close rate. All right, so let's share. Aren't y'all glad that I do this? I'm just gonna be. Look at here. Look how this is. So this is Beth's quote and close report from Dash, from our carrier. We have a reporting system called Dash, and this goes back almost 3 months. So you can see count of quotes up at the top. Now that's number of policies. Some policies might have 3 or 5 cars on them. So these aren't just individual items, it's total quotes. So look, some months it's close, some weeks, this is week at a time, some weeks it's close to 100, some weeks it's 70, almost 100 on the dot. So what could we say the average is? Maybe called around 80. Or 75 to 80 quotes a week, y'all. That's only 12 or 15 a day, 12 to 15 quotes a day. That's 5 or 6 households, right? 5 or 6 households in 8 hours. If that's all you're doing is banging phones and taking calls, she's getting plenty of quote requests inbound and things that she generates from service too. This red line is the close ratio. So I put it over this dot here when I took the screenshot to show that this dot was 23.96%. So that's 24%. A little less, a little above 20. Hey, maybe that's getting closer to 30. So I'd say our average is probably around 25%, maybe some weeks less. Like this week, she didn't even quote that much and her close rate was lower. But look at the next week. Boom. This week, she was closing stuff that she lined up last week. You see, and or last month, and or last year, and or 5 years ago. Okay, so this little graph here shows you how much of a failure Beth is. She's only closing 24%. Only 24%. That means 76% of people that she actually took time to quote said no. Y'all, that's pretty good. In fact, if you're bragging about your high close rate, I'd tell you that you're not quoting enough. Right? It's all about the activity and all about the conversations. Now, I want to try to wrap up this conversation so we can get to your Q&A. Let's see the results. All right? This is a screenshot of Beth's individual sales log. We keep sales logs outside of our own carrier systems. This is her actual sales log from GM, showing that she hit 200. We had told her if she hit 200, she would get to do a webinar from y'all. And she got so excited. She's like, oh, yes, I can do that. Didn't you? I'm just kidding. She just did this on her own. She had 200 items in GM. For those of you that know what Allstate points are, 2,400 points. Here's the actual point scale here. I deleted rows that didn't apply to her. So I deleted policies that she didn't sell just to make it tighter. And I deleted sources that didn't apply. So anyway, so at 2,400 points, 112,000 in premium. That's a little under $600 per item. So for those of you that track that, you might be in Texas and be thinking, wee doggy, our average premium is 900. Or you might be in Utah and say, well, our average premium is 400. So our average is around 600. Now, what was the mix? So she wrote 65 standard autos, only 2 non-standards, 54 homes, 23 renters, 33 umbrellas. How many of y'all been doing this for years and haven't written 33 umbrellas in your entire career? Does this show that she's walking the talk? You don't just sell 33 umbrellas to 33 different customers in a month, which requires much higher liability limits on the underlying policies, and that they be bundled together by focusing on price. The proof's in the pudding. Some landlords, some boats, some motorcycles, so some toys for 200 total. Now the sources. Let's look at the sources. Look at the diversification. 28 from the book. Those are from inbound calls. 28 from outbound cross sales to customers. That's how we delineate. So these are what she generated from service calls. This is what's generated from outbound calls to customers or prospects. Call in is not generating from a service call or an outbound call. That's someone calling in. Only 16 of the 200 were, hey, can I buy insurance? So some of y'all might say, well, we don't get a lot of call-ins. Okay. Neither does Beth. Direct mail, as you can see, we're doing some direct mail. So she got 28 from that. God, we haven't even used them in a long time. So that must have just come in a while ago, and it's a requote or something. Requotes and win-backs, another fair amount. The service team, and look, I pulled out over here the service team members that generated 33 items for Beth that month. Crap, why is it 2 off? Oh, crap, I must have messed something up when I was copying and pasting. Why is it? Now that's going to drive me crazy. I'm going to have to figure out what the error is. Only about 16% or so of her business came from the service team. But isn't that nice? Isn't that nice to have partners that work with you and generate sales? And then referrals from COIs. So here's the thing. This takes us back to, and now we're going to get to the Q&A in just a moment. This takes us back to where this conversation started on diversification of your pipeline and prospects and lists. She's working cross sales, requotes, and win backs. Also taking service calls, which are sometimes a call-in request for a quote. She's also working really well with the service team, who do a fantastic job generating close to 30% of our business on most months. But on that month, it was only about 17% of her business. But overall, it's about 30% of our business comes from our service team. She's diversified and doing it all. So see, if you're only focusing on 1 or 2 things, that's why you're only writing 40 items a month. And remember, don't compare yourself to Beth or anybody else. Beat yourself. But I hope it's beneficial to actually see these actual results and numbers and the diversification. It's not all because we're buying tons of leads or doing lots of marketing or spending tons of money. We're not. She's busting it every day, working what's already in the system and nurturing what's already in the system and coming in every day to the agency. So with that, we have about 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm afraid to look at the chat. I'm literally afraid to see how many chats we have. So I'm going to try to go through some of these that you guys have already submitted and get to some questions. Jason said, dang girl. Jason said, dang girl. All right, let's see here. How many mailers and budget for mailers? We're only spending a couple thousand a month on mailers, Scott. It's just not a lot right now because of the way the grids are and stuff for the way things are at the agency. So we're sending out 3,000 or 4,000 pieces. You know, I think that those are pretty good numbers for her to be sending. We send out about 3,000 pieces a month for Beth. And they generate 30 to 50 items a month for her. June was actually a little bit lower than May, I think, but I'm not going to complain. She keeps writing 150 or so items a month. You won't hear me complain, okay? What does BOB stand for? Ashley, that stands for Book of Business. We call Book of Business as if it's like a service interaction or something, and we turn that into something else. That's a current customer Book of Business. Book of Business cross-sell is us being proactive and outbound. And then a call-in is a customer calling in and saying, hi, I'd like to buy insurance. So that's the way we kind of delineate those 3 things. Scott says, amen. I'd be happy with LSPs doing 75 items a month. I did see a lot of questions earlier, so I want to try to go through this here. Lee says, I can do a 40-minute mile. Lee, we're very much the same. Okay, so STXB411Y says, how does Beth write so many items that she has to follow up with mortgage companies, send evidence of insurance, payment notices, etc.? She has to put all the policies in e-agent, or we actually use agency Zoom to track our sales and stuff. Make sure docs are signed, etc. How do you kind of button up sales, keep them nice and tight, and do you have any help from the service team or like an assistant?
Yes. So now I didn't always have help. I didn't always need it because I wasn't writing as much business now as I was before. But now I have an assistant, and she handles anything that's not coverage related or premium related. So from the time that I close the sale, which means I take it from start to finish, she handles onboarding, she handles form retrieval, she handles welcome calls, she handles sending the evidence of insurance, she handles mortgagee changes and updates. So basically anything that's administrative, she handles that, and she gets it off my plate once the deal is closed. And I do transition the influence as I'm closing out the sale of the policies and letting them know, hey, I will be your primary point of contact, but I also have an assistant. So if you need anything going forward, she will also be a point of contact for you as well. But I do have an assistant that handles most administrative duties, and she kind of helps take most of those things that would be time consuming for me off my plate. So that helps a lot.
But to be super duper clear, we're not telling you to go to your office manager or owner and say, hey, Beth said to hire an assistant. You were hitting $100 a month. What was the first month? In May of 15? April of 15. So that's what, 4.5 years now? Mm-hmm. So hitting over $100 a month for 4.5 years or so now, hasn't always had an assistant
Right.
for just the past couple of years. And honestly, that assistant does other stuff.
Yeah.
She orders supplies for the agency. She helps me with stuff. I send her to Walmart to get my gum because you know me. If you know me, I like my gum. And if I run out of gum, I'm like, Kenzie, go get me some gum. And she gets me some gum. Y'all, if you're only writing 40 or 50 items a month, which is great, by the way, for some people, if you're not writing hundreds of items a month, you have time to do the back end. It's not that much. You're only talking about one sale a day or sometimes one sale every other day. So don't say, oh, she's only doing that because she has help. No, she has help because she was doing great. We gave her help so she could keep doing more. Right? So I hope that helps. Caitlin says, if you have a lead with liability and you offer them max liability and umbrella and the client's on board, but they just can't make the costs work, how do you have the conversation to move down to maybe no umbrella or maybe 100, 300 without undermining your previous concerns or conversation?
So I struggle with that. I'll be honest with you. Is I don't want to take away from the credibility and everything that I just tried to teach them and I just tried to educate them on. So you still want to reiterate the importance behind that conversation, but you also want to be like, you know what? If we can't make this work for you budget or financially, I would still rather have you here at our lowest tier of coverage, which is our agency standard at doing 100, 300. I'd rather have you here with that type of coverage than have you somewhere else because I've already taken the time to educate you and your family. I do care about you. I do want your business. So even if you can't make it work budget or, from a financial sense, and you've already reiterated the importance, it's okay to do that. But you also want to, plant the seed that, hey, we're going to have a conversation 3 months from now or 6 months now, and we're going to revisit making this work. So I've struggled with that because I'm like, I'm headstrong on doing 250, 500 and an umbrella. I truly believe in it. I'm convicted of it. I'm not going any lower come hell or high water. But at the end of the day, as long as you've reiterated the importance, they understand and acknowledge that you would rather have them here, even at a lower tier of coverage, the lowest standard for your agency, and take care of them and know that they're going to be, well advised and well educated regardless of what happens rather than having them somewhere else. So.
Very well said. As long as we're putting somebody in a better position, I feel good about it. So she's just very stubborn and hard-headed. She used to come into my office and be like, oh, they just don't care. They just don't love their family. Like, they're not going to buy the right protection. I'm like, dude, take a chill pill. Yeah. Did you write them? Yeah, I wrote them. I'm like, all right, get back to work.
He has to talk me off of a ledge if,
well, you care. And what? Like, do you think, actually, let me just do an aside. Do you think that your level of conviction and care and sincere concern and like, no, Mr. Customer, we're not going to do that. Do you think you being really direct with people and actually caring and really wanting to protect people, is that one reason why you're so successful?
I think that it definitely drives 100%. Me to not give up, for sure.
Jaden said, I only talk to about 10 people out of every 100 calls. Jaden, that's good. Yeah. You're going to leave lots of messages. Remember those seeds. So 10 out of 100 is actually pretty good. Keep calling, keep calling, keep calling. Let's see here. I'm scrolling, trying to find another question. Gina asked, who does policy reviews in your office? I had a client today who has only been with us for a couple of years. I spent almost an hour with him reviewing his home, auto, and umbrella. Is that unusual? If they already have home, auto, and umbrella, Beth's not reviewing them. Someone else will review them on service type. But if they're a monoline, major line customer, so if they only have like an auto or a property, then she'll do the mini review and then assume the quote of the other lines after the 7 to 10 minute review to quote the cross sell. We teach how to do that in the cross sells, in the reviews course and the cross sell chapters. All right, so you can search cross sell and you'll find it in the P&C production course and the lead generation course, and we teach it in the reviews course because that's how we do reviews. So Beth's certainly not going to review somebody that already has auto, home, and property with us. We let the service team do that. She will review the monoline to then assume the quote of the cross sell. Rachel says, I noticed that she comes in 45 minutes early to handle or delegate follow-up works so her plate is clear for the day. Y'all, we're not telling y'all to work overtime or anything like that, but Rachel picked up that tip. Do you think that's very helpful just to kind of come in, knock out emails and stuff, just to kind of have a clear slate for the day?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I'm clearing the slate, so I don't have anything that's going to back me up from the very first, from the very beginning of my shift for the day. So yeah, I mean, clearing off my plate and delegating to a qualified service team member or, giving it to my assistant, definitely helps to keep me focused on the one thing I'm supposed to be doing. And that's outbound calling and prospecting for new business. So, I would hate to come in at 8:30 and have to shuffle through 50 emails and get those distributed to the right people and then find myself digging a hole 2 hours later and I've still not made the first phone call. So again, you don't have to do that, but for me, it's good for me to do that. And I can kind of decompress before I start, preparing myself mentally to get on the phone.
Melissa asks, do you break your day down by time frames, like doing outbound calls from 1 to 3 or 9 to 12, or are you just calling and taking and calling and taking? It's just like a machine.
Yeah. So we don't have quoting hours or call hours, or I don't split anything up in regards to that. So when I start outbound, that's what I'm doing. And I just continue doing that throughout the entire day. Now, obviously, if I have something that I have to break away from to handle, as far as, sending an EOI, or maybe a phone call comes through, somebody needs help with something, I handle that. And then I get back to outbound calling.
Let's see here. So Brian is calling us a liar, as is Tiffany. So Brian says, I still have a hard time grasping. Now, I'm kidding. I'm kidding with you, Brian. You know I love you. I still have a hard time grasping how this is physically possible from a time standpoint. And then Tiffany says, me too, Brian. So let's see here. Back to the call. Someone help me, Lord. Okay. Y'all can't see this. I'm not going to pull it up. So 2,900 completed calls, inbound and outbound. Now, by the way, that's including voicemails, right? 2,900 calls divided by, how many days were there in June? 21? Is it 21? That's 138. 138. All right. Now, let me go back to where I can see myself. Oh, that's backwards. It's 138. 138 divided by 9, because she's at her desk. That's 15 an hour. 15 an hour. What is 60 divided by 15? Well, that's 4. Keep in mind, I went to Alabama, so I had to use my calculator to do that. Roll Tide. 4. Every 4 minutes. Every 4 minutes, she's picking up the phone. 90% of calls are a voicemail, right? 10% of calls are a conversation, many of which are very short. She's making all these thousands of inbound and outbound calls and only talked for a total of 54 hours. Let's call it 55 hours divided by 21. 55 divided by 21. That's not even 3 hours a day. Mm-mm. So less than 3 hours a day of talk time out of 8 to 9 hours that she works. This is physically possible.
Right.
I mean, in fact, it should be more. Beth, do more. I'm just kidding. You're fine. You're doing fine. Y'all, this is physically possible. You got to start believing in your head that you can do more. And by the way, I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just asking you to do more. Do more than you did yesterday. Just a little bit more than you did yesterday. All right. Let's see. We have a couple more minutes here and tons of chats. Let's see here. How many states do you write business in? All of Beth's business were written in Alabama in that month. We do have agencies in Georgia. Mm-hmm. We're also licensed in Tennessee, but we don't actively prospect in Tennessee. I mean, Alabama. Yeah. Right? We're not marketing the Southeast. We're not marketing the Eastern Seaboard. Some agencies do that. Could you imagine if we did that? You'd probably hate me. You're like, oh my gosh, all these different RMPs and all these different things. No, we focus, most of our customers are within 20, 30 miles of us. We don't market, like our direct mail only goes out like 20-mile radius, which is a big radius if you do the square miles. I don't know the Pythagorean theorem, but it's hundreds of square miles, right? But that's it. We're not marketing for the whole state. We're certainly not marketing in different states. And somebody asked about the emails, like, dang, that's a lot of emails. Yes, and she has thousands of campaigns applied. She's leveraging technology to send emails out, to remind her to call them. Yeah. So leveraging your lead management system, whatever that is so, so, so vital. And it kind of duplicates yourself or triplicates yourself.
And I've said that from the very beginning. When I first started, we had another lead management system that we were using, and I'm telling you, when we had change, I hated it, but it's because I did not know the capabilities of the new system and how much it was going to help me. It did not have the campaign capabilities. It didn't have any customization. There wasn't really a lot that it could do for you behind the scenes. The follow-up tool, the Lightspeed system that we use, the capabilities of that, of duplicating your efforts and your phone calls and your emails and all that stuff that works behind the scenes. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. I can be calling new people and working a new set of a new set of leads on my dashboard tomorrow, and the people that I called yesterday, it's already sending out things to them. So the follow-up tool is an amazing leads management system that has helped me immensely with my follow-up process.
Christian says, what are the other producers in the office averaging? Is Beth an anomaly, or is this pretty consistent with your agency model? Beth has definitely been our leader and has been for a while, but we have 2 to 3 other producers every month that are hitting 80 to 100, 120 every single month. And we have 1 or 2 newer producers that are doing like 50 to 60-ish. You know, we'll if they're starting to dip below 40, then we kind of have a problem. So 40 to 60 is kind of what our lower end producers do. 80 to 100 is what our mid end producers do. And we'll always have 1, 2, sometimes 3 exceed 100. We call that Century Club. And if y'all have been in CWC for any time, you know that, but many of y'all might be new. So we've got them all over the map. And again, we are super, super thankful that we have team members, not just Beth. We couldn't hit our goals with just Beth. We have to have every team member here, and they're all getting better. We have 5 producers right now. That's it. 5 producers, and we do 400 to 500 items a month with 5 producers. Okay. We're pretty lean right now for many reasons that there's no reason to get into now in terms of this call, but we're very lean staff-wise. We have 10 CSRs and 5 producers across 4 locations in 2 states and $36 million in premium. You don't get much leaner than that staff-wise. So we get more from everybody, and everybody rises up and does such a great job. I'm super proud of our entire team. I'm super, super proud of our entire team. And you've seen calls with Josephine. You've seen Miriam, right? So we have other team members that have hit Century Club agents. This is not just, I mean, you are an anomaly at the high end, but we have producers that definitely are pulling their weight and doing so much more, and they're getting better every month too. We only have a couple minutes here. How many hours a day do you work, Beth? And do you ever take a lunch break? You really don't leave.
Rarely ever.
Now, we're not telling y'all to work overtime.
Ever do I leave the office?
Okay. She comes in early, rarely leaves the office, but what time do you leave?
5:30.
5:30 on the dot. She's out the door.
Punch that clock. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
We don't have a clock.
Yeah, we don't.
But 5:30, I'm gone.
Yeah. So she comes in early, she works a little tail off, and she leaves and goes home. She's not working nights, no weekends, none of that. So she works probably 45 to 50 hours a week, if you do that math, and does really well for herself in those 45 to 50 hours. I try to sell coverage, but it seems 100% of people are focused solely on price. I can promise you 100% of people aren't focused solely on price. Make sure that you're following the CWC sales process scorecard, that you're leading with liability. And if you go into every conversation expect to lose, you will. So be positive every time someone answers that phone. Be like, oh yeah, I'm about to close this deal. I'm going to get their credit card number in about 32 minutes, right? So stay positive. Don't focus on the negative. Focus on the positive. The glass is half full. Angel asked a good question. I watch the rapport building videos a lot, but I still struggle with dead air, especially when the client's energy is down. So how do you keep the conversation flowing with a client that might be kind of dead and not really participating?
So JP does a lot of, actually JP started doing a lot of our coaching calls many years back. And that was one of the first things he picked out about me. I'll be honest. I was not building rapport. I was very transactional. I was just trying to get to the point and move on. And that was crashing a lot of my deals, is because I was not talking to them about what they care about. And so they weren't, there wasn't any likability at the end, even though I was getting my point across about coverage and all that good stuff. So for me, I start listening for cues, for things that I could potentially bond with them on to start a conversation and strike up, some good conversation about things. It could be about their kiddos. It could be about buying a house. It could be about just something that I can bond with them on, and then I'll strike up a conversation about it. So look for those cues if they start talking about kids or pets, or they're going on vacation, or they're going to the beach, or they're buying something, or what have you. Look for any type of cue that you can, bond with them on something, and then start a conversation about it. And that will fill the dead air as you go from talking about their family and what they care about most to talking about insurance and what you're trying to help them with.
Well, with that, we're going to end this call. We had almost 800 people joining us live. And for those of you watching the recording, thank you so much for investing your time. And I want to thank Beth for taking an hour of her time to do this. Y'all, she's doing this out of the goodness of her heart because she wants to help y'all get better. And I fully expect every single person on this call to work a little bit harder next week than you did this week, and to keep growing and keep getting better. But I want to thank Beth for joining us. Thank you guys all for joining us. I hope this has been very helpful for you. Now, there's still a few hours left in the day. There's still a few hours left in the week. Get off this call, pick up the phone, close somebody, write some business, have a great weekend, and please, for God's sake, wash your hands and wear a damn mask and stay home. We need this pandemic to end, all right? So wash your hands, stay home, wear a mask, be well, work your tail off, do well for you and your family, be successful in your own skin and your own opportunity, and remember to beat yourself every single day. With that, let's go wash our hands and spray each other with Lysol.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye.